Hello and welcome again. We're doing another run through of Breaking the Stigma ahead of the talks next week in Manchester and Leeds with Squire Patton Boggs as part of their Breaking the Stigma and Inclusive Law events. This is very much a draft run through, me practicing. So there'll probably be fuck ups, there'll probably be mistakes, whatever it happens. But the important thing is I'm trying to get the kind of tone and feel right. Plus also this is a way for people who can't attend the events to actually see what's being said, how it's being said, why it's being said. So we're just going to crack on with it, see what happens. It will be the full presentation, so feel free to watch it and not turn up. But obviously these events are done without cue cards, without any preparation, so I will tell different stories on the day. So you're probably best to turn up if you want to hear more interesting things. Anyway, to begin. Not working. That's not good.
This is a
now
fair
it is.
request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager. But you will constantly remind yourself that some of my generation judges people by their race, their belief, or the color of their skin, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or blue sniffers.
Did you recognise that intro at all? If you did, would you even admit to it? So I included that, one, because I always wanted to know what it'd be like to stand up to intro music, but two, because it helps highlight how much stigma we have actually overcome as a species, as a people. And we've overcome it not only in the workplace and our daily lives, but as a society. And mental health should be no different, and this hopefully is the start of that. Now, I'm welcoming you to Breaking the Stigma in once, I still find this impossible. This talk has more false starts than Lord of the Rings has false endings. But before we begin on the other false starts, I just want to say thank you to Squire Patton Boggs for hosting these events. And in particular, a special thank you to Daniela, who has organised them after coming to see me speak at Leeds City Council about 6 months ago. And without her, none of this would have been possible, none of it would have happened. So thank you. So some of you may have had a look at my background. You may have looked into what I do, where I'm from. Unlikely. Everyone works so hard these days. Who'd bother? He's going to do an intro anyway. So that's exactly what this bit is. I describe myself as living a life of two halves until I almost ended them, and that very much what it is. I'm Andrew Solkeld. I'm a chartered accountant, member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of England and Wales. I trained at PwC. I specialised in corporate finance. I did lots of work in industry and am now an investor and finance director at a small tech startup in Leeds with the aims of helping the high street fight back. If you've not heard of us, hopefully soon will. How's that come across? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Got almost everything on paper. A little bit arrogant, but not too much to put you off. Anyway, there's the other half as well. I'm Andy. I'm just another guy. I'm a geek. I love board games. I play card games. I live with my kitten Pika, and I listen to chiptune music. I live with depression, and a couple of years ago I almost took my own life because it was too much for me. Nowadays I write, I speak, and I advocate positive mental health, and I still live with depression. I'm still medicated, but I'm doing what I can to survive. So which of those is more honest? Which is more relatable? And why is it we always introduce ourselves as the first and never as the second? That is what Breaking the Stigma is to me. It's about a way to allow us to be honest and to be who we really are. This all started, Breaking the Stigma as a whole in earnest started on World Mental Health Day 2018 when a friend of mine, Zaina Khan, from a company called Chakra Corporate, took a great risk in inviting me as a complete stranger then to stand up and tell his story on stage. Without any of that, none of this would be possible. So again, thank you to Zaina. And another false start. Before we crack on in earnest, I have a book coming out next year, and my publicist would hate it if I didn't mention it. And also, I'm going to find it near impossible not to mention it. I'm really excited about this. It's called Life is a Four-Letter Word. It's a mental health survival guide for professionals, applicable to everyone, but it cues off a lot of my experiences as working in practice, what it's like living in professional practice. Shout out to yourselves again. David Chan, one of the partners at Squire Patton Boggs, has written the foreword, or one of the forewords to the book. I'm going to try not to bring it up, but as always, I can't avoid it. It's a big part of my life now, and will continue to be a big part of my life going forward. As always, you can find everything about the book, about me, about what I do on my website and on social media. As always, follow, like, subscribe, donate, hit that little bell icon. It all really helps. It doesn't. So right, you'll see I'm using memes, and I use a lot of memes. I use nothing but memes pretty much. And I'm so glad they're exempt from Article 13, because that would be absolutely horrible to be doing all this in a room full of lawyers. But the reason I use memes in a lot of this is they're like maths, good maths. It's simple, they're elegant, and they help make something incredibly complex, incredibly relatable. And let's just boil it down. My life is talking about depression and suicide it can be pretty dry and will be quite emotional for all of us. I don't want this talk to be a drag. I want it to be enjoyable for everyone. And memes help me put some humour behind what is incredibly emotional and incredibly personal topic. Before we go into anything, again, false start, bit of the legal disclosures and all that, catering to the audience here. Firstly, I'm not a trained professional in this. I'm not a therapist, counsellor, psychotherapist, whatever title you want to put about it. I have studied nothing to do with mental health or the mind. I just have lived experience. And it is my experience. This is point 2. My experience with mental health might differ from other people's. It's not just what I feel and what I've gone through may be different, but the importance is it's about talking about it. And finally, I'm going to say some probably controversial things. There'll probably be swearing, as there already has been. Just remember that I don't hold any ill will about my past. I don't regret it. I'm not angry about it. It is what it is, and it just happened. As with everything, hindsight is 20/20 and often rose tinted. And I just want you to know that whilst I will make reference to some pretty horrible stuff that goes on, I don't blame anyone for it. A lot of this is me. Right, I bet you thought we were going to go off there. I'm going to start. Nope. Again, another false start. I'm putting this up here because there's a lot of talk around what's getting described as imposter syndrome nowadays in the workplace. And I I just want you to know that this is actually how I feel when I'm up here. I've caveated myself already, saying that I'm not an expert in this. I just have lived experience. I'm not trained in any of this. The only thing I know is how I felt and how I feel. There are other people that understand this topic far greater than I do and would probably be far better at talking about it. I mean, in the bigger picture, I'm getting a book published about this, and there are other people that have worked longer and harder and strived to achieve publishing a book than I ever have. I mean, I just seem to have fallen into it. Those people deserve it more. I'm just another guy, as I keep saying. And that always makes me question as to myself as why I stand up here and why I do this. But, sorry, skip that by accident. Meant to do it over here. But the thing is, when I was at my lowest low, when I was living with depression, and it was everything and consuming, no one thought it of me. No one expected it of me. They believed the fake smiles, the fake chauvinism, the fake laughter and fake confidence that I seemingly exude on everything that I say and do. No one knew. Not my friends, not my family, not my colleagues, no one. And that's why I stand up here, because depression, mental health, anxiety, whatever you wanna talk about, it ain't as it's often depicted. It's not about weeping in a corner or being a Disney princess and collapsing on a rock or anything like that. Sometimes you can appear absolutely fine, and it's what's underneath it that counts. And that's why I stand up here, to show that even though you can come across as confident, well-spoken, and able to stand in front of tens, hundreds of people and talk about it, you can still feel like nothing underneath it all. And people need to actually feel they can talk about it. So now, actually into Breaking the Stigma. So this, I love this, because this is pretty much what encapsulated work when I first got there. Every single day, every time there was something that needed to happen, it was always now. And when it was, I need you to do this by tomorrow morning, it was like, but I've got plans tonight. And suddenly having a social life, having any life that was outside of work, always felt it came second. And always, like, it always seemed to be looked down upon, but not in an active way, in the most passive-aggressive way possible. So, bit of a story. I was at an audit client once. Yes, boo, hiss, I know, no one likes auditors. And I was there, and I got a phone call from some friends, and they said, do you want to come out for a meal for your birthday tonight? And I was like, oh wow, guys are actually nice and are actually good friends. That's great. Of course they do. So I accepted, and I went to speak to the manager on site and just said, hey, yeah, I'm going out tonight. I'm going to leave work early, but that's cool. And the response, oh, it's not what you think. It's not a, yeah, that sounds great. It was a, what? Are you going out for your birthday again? You went out last night with your parents. Oh, well, fine. We'll pick up the slack whilst you're not here. All right. 2 things. Well, 3. Quite a lot, in fact. I'm just going to monologue on this. It's my choice where I spend my time. I choose it. I choose to stay late if I want to. I choose to go home if I don't want to. I'm meant to be here, and I'm saying I want to enjoy something, and you in your nicest, friendliest, bantery way possible, have suddenly turned what should be a good event into something I now feel guilty about. What the fuck? That's not how it should work. But anyway, it kept happening time and time again, so there needed to be some form of work-life balance put in place. And just like that, work and life did balance. The only difference was there was no life and work just kept balancing with itself. And just as I said before, professional accountant man won. Now, I'm aware not everyone in this room works in professional services or professional practice, so here's a bit of breakdown of what it's like. It's fundamentally Darwinian. The strong survive, the weak perish, and no one is irreplaceable. You might think you are, but you're not. We can't compete with our other professional services firms on the quality of our work because a lot of it is driven by legislation, laws, regulations, everything like that, and therefore the result is defined at the outset. Therefore, you can't charge based on you knowing something extra because ultimately everyone knows it. And we can't lower our prices and compete that way because, well, you know, professional services. We'll charge you an arm and a leg for anything. So how do we actually compete? And this is where it comes back to the slides. We compete with our people. People do define every single professional services firm. However, you can't differ your people too much. You can't have too many loose cannons. I mean, I don't even think you're allowed any nowadays. But so how is that competition going to actually work out? Now, if you haven't guessed by now, I'm not an old boy. I don't attend a rugby club or whatever. I don't watch football on weekends. I don't even know how to swing a golf racket or whatever it is. I value myself on being different. I consider having a breadth of experience more valuable than having a depth of experience. I consider myself an expert generalist. So being asked to fit into one of the few pigeonholes that offer themselves to you in practice just didn't work for me. And because of how I am and because of how practice is structured mostly, I can tell you honestly that I suffered so much workplace bullying. And it's not in the way bullying works when you're at school. You don't just knock someone over onto the floor and laugh at them. No, bullying is rebranded when you step into the work environments, and it's called banter. And whatever we say, banter at its heart is the same as bullying. The only difference is you are trying to hide what the actual meaning of it is. I was bullied about my hobbies. I was bullied about my taste in music. I was bullied about my hair and my looks. I mean, that one's fair. I haven't changed my hair since I was a teenager, so all right, I'll let you off on that one. But it's still bullying, even though it's called banter. I can remember the nursery rhyme, sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never harm thee. No, they don't harm you, but they last with you a lifetime. Stuff that's said you'll remember. I can tell you the names of everyone involved in any of the incidents of bullying. I can tell you where they work now. They might even be listening to this talk. They're probably now preaching about building positive mentally positive environments for people to work in. It's interesting. But this isn't a witch hunt. This isn't saying that it's bad. This isn't saying that it's wrong. Because it's fine. It's just you don't necessarily know it at the time. You don't know the impact it's having on you. You don't know the impact it's having on those around you. So maybe, rather than just become a part of it, because that's what I did. I tried to fit in and therefore started bantering, bullying back. It doesn't mean it's wrong. Great cultures, great civilizations have been built on this sort of dynamic, but it can cause damage that you can't see. But anyway, don't worry about it. Now, you're a little different. You're out, don't fit into any of the cliques. Don't worry about it. So you made a spelling mistake on page 183 of some draft document that went to a client. Don't worry about it. Rounding error in an equity schedule at completion. Don't worry about it. What about only spending 2 hours reviewing the audit file of a FTSE 100 company? Nah, don't worry about it. It's just not the case, is it? Every single thing you do in professional services and in business as a whole nowadays is under scrutiny from someone somewhere. So whatever you do, however small, however large, you will end up worrying about it, and letting go is a near impossibility. So we end up working harder. And even though we work hard as it is, we're now working harder and harder than ever before. And the reason for this is increased competition in the marketplace. We've got new entrants, we've got margin pressure, increasing salary demands. Whatever it is, the need for our firms to stand out ahead of the competition is greater than it's ever been. And we can't compete on cost, we can't compete on quality, we can't really compete on our people. So how do we compete? And for anyone involved in marketing and business development, this is your bread and butter. We put ourselves in our client's shoes. We put clear blue water between us and our competition. Velocity, it's more than distance over time. Jesus, of course it is. It's got trajectory. But basically, we just do more work and we don't charge you for it. Let's be honest about it. That's what it is. So those simple questions of what do you think would happen to the client if X, or what do you think they'd think about Y, and then suddenly we go exploring a rabbit hole of ifs, buts, and maybes that takes days to navigate, figuring out all the potential possibilities, and you end up second guessing yourself, and then speaking to your boss, you're second guessing his boss, and all these questions just get wrapped up in a massive mess. And then 5 days goes by when actually all you really need to do is just say, you know what, they probably don't care, because they know the business better than we do, because we don't make boxes or whatever their actual business is. Process is exhausting, but it's okay. We eventually get to do what we want to do. Maybe not when we want to do it, but we get to do what we want to do. Tired, get home, finally start relaxing, and then nope, not in the slightest. Brain goes, oh yeah, I think I made that typo on page 183, didn't I? And then as we start questioning ourselves on what we've accomplished in the day, the panic sets in, palpitations start happening, and then our blessed mobile phones that have brought us so much joy start buzzing, and you know exactly what it is. Oh hey, did you notice there's a typo on page 183? Fuck. It just never ends. And then when it's all said and done, maybe someone says something nice about it. But this is a huge problem for me, and I think it's a huge problem in society as a whole now. We don't actually say nice things to each other that much anymore. It's assumed, and the hard work people put in is assumed. Now, I've had to deal with this. It's a genuine problem because too many people say too many nice things about me, and I have had to learn to just accept them. But here's what happened. Here's where my brain went to when I was doing all this. Someone would say, "Thank you for the hard work," and I'd go, "Oh, okay. I don't think I worked that hard. Do they think this is working hard? Or do they think it was easy and I made it hard? Or do they think I worked hard this time but don't work hard the rest of the time? Or do they think that I made the work harder than it needed to be?" And then the brain goes into overdrive trying to analyze a very small, innocuous compliment that was actually probably just meant in earnest. But here's another one that's even more relatable. "You're looking good today. Beautiful." Oh, am I beautiful because I'm wearing makeup? Am I only beautiful today, but not the rest of the time? Are they hitting on me? Now, in all honesty, if I'm going to say something nice to someone, I really hope they understand that it is true. Bottom of my heart, true. But it's something we all need to learn about. And this is the first point for today. Make a habit of saying thank you. Make a habit that everyone that does something for you, whether it is hard or easy, make sure they know they're valued, because they may well be rewarded, and they may be rewarded very well, but they may not feel valued for it. And that feeling of value is more valuable than any reward package you can offer them. But here is my turning point. Here's where the structure of constantly questioning and constantly analysing went a step too far. And I didn't realise it at the time, but this is where that other guy started fighting back. And I didn't notice it, but I started questioning everything. I started questioning whether my friends even liked me. Sure, we've been friends for ages, but do they only like me now because I can afford the first round of drinks? Or are we just friends of convenience because we've known each other so long and it's easier to keep going than it is to end everything? And similarly, I started questioning my family and whether they like me. Sure, I know they love me, we're family, but we don't enjoy the same pastimes. We don't see each other that often. We care about each other, but do they even like what I've become and what I'm doing in my life? And all of this just built up, and the questions started taking over, and the process was isolating, and it pushed me further and further away from those I cared about. And so here's the second point of today, and it's so soon after the first, but it's so valuable. If you're not fine, don't say you're fine. If you're not okay and things aren't okay, don't say you're just okay. Because if you don't start talking about your feelings, then you're no worse than the inevitable apocalypse that's going to be brought aside by the robots and AI. We, as the human species, are one of few on our planets that have real emotional intelligence. So use it. If you're not feeling well, say you're not feeling well. But and if none of that convinces you, realize that if you don't show your emotions, if you internalize all of it, and if you act strong but are in fact weak underneath, this is where you can get to, because this is where I ended up. Let it sink in. Let you realize how honest it is that I turned my back on my friends, my family, my loved ones, and everything that was going on in my head just took over, and I couldn't see a way out. and it became everything. It was consuming, and that numbness was there and with me. Now I can tell you precisely that I've been at this moment, this exact moment in my life 3 times, as of now. Who knows what's coming? But they're all very different, but they all stem from a very similar place. So what I'm going to do over the next part of this presentation is talk about what it means to me, what my depression is, and why I'm actually okay with it, and why I can talk about it in the way I do. And hopefully it will give you an insight into what it's like. So I talk about depression because that's what I'm diagnosed with. I've been diagnosed with it since about 2015, and I've been medicated since then. I've had various bouts with anxiety in the past, and was medicated for that then. But looking back in hindsight, I can see I've probably suffered from depression, anxiety, ill mental health for most of my life, probably since I was a teenager. Now, in 2017, it got really bad. It was really, really bad. Work was stale. Everyone I knew was distant. Friends were having children and were building their own lives. I'm really happy for them. My family were busy dealing with various things they were going through, and I was struggling to connect with people. And just at that moment when I was feeling at my lowest, my now ex-wife, after 11 years together and almost a year of individual and couples therapy, left me as she was a lesbian, and there was no way it could be solved. Yes, I am Ross Geller, which is even worse. I remember vividly coming home one day where we talked about how, where we discussed how it was never going to work. I was in the middle of cooking dinner. It was halloumi, pine nut, pesto, and olive oil in a lovely little fresh pasta dish, and then told it was 90% certain to not being working, for the marriage not working out. And I collapsed. I made it as far as bed. I didn't get out. I missed my best friend's first daughter's naming day ceremony, where I was meant to be talking and welcoming her into the world. But at that point in time, I barely wanted to be a part of the world myself. So that was where it was. And the thing was, it wasn't just it wasn't just my ex-wife I lost in that moment. It wasn't just her that was gone. The future we were building, the house we were decorating together, that was gone too. The cats that we owned together or cared for together, you don't own pets, they own you. They'd need to be rehomed as we sold the house. They were gone. The image of us growing old together, retiring together, and having that time together, that was gone. But we were also trying to have children, and that image of us having children together and raising kids, that was gone. In that moment, everything I had ever thought about what could be in the future that I had vested myself into was gone. And this is so when people ask me what depression is, what it really is, it's a really heavy numbness that's part of you, and it doesn't just make the happiness and the good times go away. They're not the only things that are gone. it takes away all the sadness, all the pain, all the suffering, and it just leaves you numb. And when you can't feel anything, when you can't feel hope, but when you can't feel pain, you feel less and less human as time goes on. And that's it. Everything inside and out about you is gone. Now, just to bring it back into reality, my ex-wife and I are actually pretty good friends now. I mean, I've had to talk to her a lot about life as a four-letter word, because obviously I'm talking about some of our time together. The divorce is finished, everything's agreed, we did it without lawyers, no fees for you. We were really adult about it, and it hurt. It did hurt, but it was better for both of us this way. There was pain, yes, but there was always going to be pain, but we're actually both a lot happier now than we ever have been. But still, this is where I was. You might even know the Q park in question. I mean, heck, I've given this talk opposite that Q park. That was an interesting one. But this is where I got to. One day I was at my computer, the very computer that I prepared this presentation on, and I was deciding how to end my life. I settled on the former, mostly because I didn't want to leave the house. I was too ashamed and too afraid and too scared to see anyone. I didn't want anyone to stop me. I didn't want anyone to try and talk me down. I just wanted it done. So I started figuring out, I did it my way. I started figuring out the maths behind it, how many belts I needed to make sure it could support my body weight, where the best place to have the least purchase was in the house. There was less chance of me actually catching my footing. All of that. I put a lot of thought into it, but I knew exactly what I wanted to do and how I wanted to achieve it. Now, obviously, something has changed because I'm alive and I'm here, and that almost end didn't happen. So, here's what I've learned since then. Suicide is selfish. I understand that now. You think about it a lot. You spend days, weeks, months thinking about it. It's not quick. It's not the speedy process that people think it is. Every day you find a way to keep fighting, and whatever small thing it is, it keeps you going. And it's only when you have nothing, only when you cannot find a single thing to keep you going, do you actually come to this decision. And I convinced myself of that. I convinced myself I had nothing. And in that, it convinced me that rather than this being a selfish act, it was a selfless act, because other people would no longer have to feel the pain or shame of being connected with me. They would simply just be able to move on in time. And that's not right. It is selfish, and it is something that it is one of the hardest feelings to really describe. Now, moments before I actually acted and almost ended everything, and again, I can't remember the exact details here. I was a little bit distracted at the time, trying to kill myself. So apologies for that. Next time it happens, I'll make sure to take better notes. But I got a message, whether it was Facebook, WhatsApp, Messenger, whatever you want to call it. I got a message, and it was from my best friend. Now, she's been my friend longer than I even knew my ex-wife. And she'd had a really rough time the year before, but she'd got through it. I mean, let's be honest, lesbian ex-wife kind of wins any baggage challenge there is out there, so I'm not concerned about that. And it was a really simple thing where it just said, "You good for the pub next week, or next month, or whenever it was we'd agreed." But all I heard it as was, "You selfish bugger. There's those of us that need you. Don't you dare do something like that." And she may not even know about it to this day, but in that moment, in that exact instance, it was her that saved my life. And it wasn't all my friends, it wasn't all my family, it wasn't my job or my colleagues. It was just a simple reminder that when I was at my all-time lowest possible low, that there was someone that wanted me there for just being me and just being who I was. And it was powerful enough to make me want to do something different and to make me want to make a change. And I wanted to make sure that others who were struggling never felt the way that I felt in that moment. So I stopped researching how to kill myself, and I started thinking how I could make that difference to other people. Now, just before we move on to life after an almost end, I am still depressed. I'm still medicated. I take my medication daily. I still have that empty hole, that numbness, but I'm in control of it now. I understand it, and I've taken the action and ownership of it, so that on days when it is incredibly heavy, I know how to fight it, I know how to carry it, and I know I'm not doing it alone. And that is what really makes all this important. So, I wanted to change something, but I knew that if I was going to do this, and if I was actually going to make a stand and make it known, I couldn't shy away from it. I mean, I almost didn't have a future, so why should I worry about it? I hadn't talked about any of this previously, and I'd hidden it away because I was embarrassed and ashamed. And if I was going to help other people, I had to overcome that. So, I wrote an article, or a blog, or whatever you want to call it, called Breaking the Stigma. Yes, I know, an imaginative title, plagiarism, all that, or that I'm just really, really bad at coming up with stuff. And I put it on LinkedIn to raise awareness of a 24-hour charity event I was doing on my Twitch channel. Remember before when I said, please follow, subscribe, donate, blah, blah, blah. It was a joke then. It wasn't when I was doing this. This was genuinely trying to raise money for playing video games. It was great. But the response was unheard of. Within a few hours, whilst I should have been asleep in preparation for the event, I was being asked to talk on World Mental Health Day 2018 by Zaina. And look at what's followed from that. But I also did other fundraising events because, again, it's more about getting the word out there than it is about what the responses are. And the most notable thing that started is what's visible today. I got tattoos for charity. Now, sounds strange, but I hate needles. I genuinely hate any form of injection. I've had fillings done without anaesthetic because I hate needles that much. So I figured, well, you know what would be a great way to do this? I could get my little tag, MIZ7, done on my arm if we can raise some money for charity. It's the internet. People will pretty much pay for anything, particularly if it's deprecating and painful, and this is certainly a way to do that. And lo and behold, it worked, but to me it became something a lot more. This sleeve that I have is now pretty much what kept me alive. Things that I had hidden away from people, what my real heart showed. And it's now on my sleeve. When people told me that I wore my heart on my sleeve before and it was a poor trait to have in business, I now wear it with pride and tell people if they try to judge me by it, then that they're no different from judging anyone by the colour of their skin, as said in the intro. And then, well, this is a new slide. This is a brand new slide for these ones, because this is a real hotbed of topic, particularly in the professional service sector, but just in the sector as a whole. Lots of people have said to me that they're worried about their career, that if they talk about their mental health, it's the death knell of their career. I've had partners of differing organisations say to me, why should I go first? Why should I tell them about the troubles I've had? What benefit comes of it if nothing changes? Well, here's the truth. Being able to ask for help is a strength. Being vulnerable is a strength. And being honest about who you really are is a strength. I have had more opportunities come to me since I've started being honest, since I've started doing these talks, and since I've started writing articles, writing a book, and everything like that, because people know who I genuinely am. They don't see the fake that was there, the red tie, sharp shirt, and well-ironed whatevers. They just see me, and they know that what they see is what they get. It's a very Ron Seal approach, but that is what it is. And this is all about acceptance. And in that acceptance, I accepted who I was, but I also accepted the world around me. Life does have ups and downs. It is inherently unfair. Disney lied to us. We can toil endlessly, strive to achieve our wildest dreams, even change who we are, to win over a prince's heart, and we can do anything and everything, yet we can still end up dying alone in a hospital by ourselves. And as we approach our last fleeting moments on our little blue planet, we can sit there and wonder about the mysteries of the universe, or whether they actually noticed that typo on page 183. And then it ends. The universe owes us nothing. It doesn't balance out. You don't have a set number of ups and downs. What comes doesn't necessarily dictate what follows, and vice versa, and that didn't make any sense. We don't have net positives and net negatives. But in it being unfair, it also can bring peace, because it means we don't know what's coming next. If you are in a bad patch and a bad place, you have no idea how long it's going to last. If you are in a good spot, you don't know if it's going to end. All you can do is be comfortable in the now. Stop worrying about the past. It's happened. Learn from it, but don't worry about it. It's gone. And similarly, don't worry about what's tomorrow, because you could put in all the efforts to create the tomorrow you want, and it can just not happen. Worry about where you are now and accept where you are now. Forget the past, forget the future. Now's what's important. And I'm going to close this in a way that I haven't done previously, but I think is really important. Mostly because everyone in professional services loves their bullet points that they can take away. So I'm going to give you 3 bullet points that I want you to take away from today. You've had all your learnings, you've had all the stuff like that, but the most important things you can take away is acceptance in all things. Accept yourself, accept the world and where you are in it, focus on what you can change and what you can't change, and stop worrying about the typo on page 183. It doesn't matter. Be happy in where you are. Life really is too short, and you can toil for anything and never necessarily achieve that. Find your happiness in the present. Remember, you don't have to stand in front of hundreds of people giving talks, get tattoos all over your body. Yes, there are more. Or even write a book about it all. Just find that acceptance and happiness in yourself and where you are. And, oh yeah, I said 3 things, didn't I? Well, last but by no means least, just don't be a dick. And that is Breaking the Stigma. We go through an Ask Me Anything, literal Ask Me Anything. You do these on the internet and it gets really weird really quickly. But again, ask whatever you like. Standard presentation ending. Hopefully no one will throw rocks at me. Or why did I jump to rocks? It could be something, could just be little paper, but no, I want to throw whole rocks at me. Jesus. Please don't throw rocks at me, please. Throw teddy bears or kittens or something like that. But yeah, that is Breaking the Stigma from beginning to end, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much.